Hey folks, back with another video. Let's dive into what stories got my attention this week. Starting with Japan, where a 7.3 magnitude earthquake hit the areas of Miyagi and Fukushima. Now, it has been reported that 150 people have been injured, while there have been widespread blackouts, and as many as 950,000 households have been affected by it. Now, on top of it, 20% of the refining capacity has been shut down, while Toyota has suspended output from 9 factories and Nissan has suspended output from 2 factories. Now, it is, as far as I can see, as far as I was able to gather, there have been no more actual casualties amongst the people. It's just injured people, and that hopefully each and every one of them will recover soon. Moving on into our next story is, of course, the tit for tat, that is, the China versus the world. So much has happened in this sort of particular thing that I think I'm just gonna be a little bit more fast. So earlier part of the week, China had sent vessels into the Senkaku Islands. Now there was 2 vessels already present there. When I did my last video, but after that they sent another 2, making them just in this week there have been about 4 vessels that went into the Senkaku Islands. Now, separately, it seems that the US President Joe Biden has asserted that China will face consequences for human rights abuses. Now, I have only one gripe with the president of Joe Biden is the fact that when he delivered this message, he basically mangled the message while presenting it. In my opinion, there was no need to talk about what is and isn't acceptable within China. He should have put forward the position of the United States, which I believe, rightly so, is the leader of the free world. He should have just put forward a simple case of what the free world, and being the leader of it, what their position is, clear cut. And one of the positions of the free world is that they will not tolerate human rights and they will punish those who commit human rights as much and as much as possible and within the means. He didn't need to mangle that message and then see it's because of Joe Biden I'm mangling my message. Anyhow, on separate occasion, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson has confirmed the death of 4 soldiers in Ladakh region. Now, this was something I did cover in videos in last year when China and India had an escalation of tensions, and right now has confirmed that 4 soldiers had died because of that, showing that the tensions between the 2 countries is more than real, and it's going to get. There is an actual potential that that front of China is also more or less insecure from the Chinese perspective. And moving into the next story is that internally Beijing has started to tighten controls on bloggers, and it has stopped the bloggers inside of the countries from reporting or producing original content, but they can only comment on the news, which of course makes it which basically makes it that no one other than those that the Chinese government allows to report can report. Now, in as far as journalism is concerned, I think citizen journalism is as important as just about any other journalism. And again, the Beijing government is effectively just not just effectively, it is basically saying that it is going against the basic human freedom, the freedom of the individual to speak and think as they see and as they think. It is much more natural. And again, this is another front that we could uh, argue against China, that the Chinese government doesn't even allow its people the freedom to speak, making a stronger case. And again, there's much more in here, so I'll just go on to our next one. It seems that the foreign ministers of the Quad countries have asserted that they will oppose any change to the status quo, specifically in the Indo Pacific region. They have asserted that they want an open waters for all the trade to flow through. Again, I think uh, these kinds of clear cut messages are what we need to be doing. We need to, while uh, making sure that we have credible uh, deterrence, but we're also clear in our message of exactly what it is that we want, and we need to be make sure that what we want is also within the realms of what is both just and also reasonable. Now, moving further into Taiwan, where things have gotten really out of out of control, it seems, in certain sense. They are getting very, very close to, let's just say, war sort of a situation. Now, on Friday, 8 Chinese fighter aircrafts flew into Taiwan's southwestern air defense zone. Now, amongst them were 4 Chinese J-16s and 4 JH-7s. Now, of course, as soon as these planes flew in, Taiwan's air defense also scrambled their planes. Not much information I was able to gather on that. While on a separate story, it seems 4 retired Taiwanese military intelligence officers have been indicted for spying for China. Now, amongst the 4 retired Taiwanese military men, one of them is a major general, making it a serious, uh, like it has created a sort of a panic, let's just say, in Taiwan. And of course, that was followed by on Saturday with 9 Chinese aircraft flying near the Parates Islands. But the Taiwanese Defense Ministry had said that they had tracked 11, 8 fighter jets, 2 nuclear capable H-6 bombers, and 1 anti-submarine aircraft. Now, it is, I mean, we're getting very close to a physical war. Now, while flying planes close to the Taiwanese territory is very, how should we say, provocative, to say the least. It is these kind of things that also are worrying, because it is these kinds of small incidents that can quickly escalate, as as it was seen in the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, where a small escalation between the two soldiers escalated into a full-scale war. Now, I would urge the leaders of the West to be more careful around how they use the army and their military, but they need to clarify their speech. Their messaging has to be much more clear. They have to, I would urge them to have like a 3 or 4 bullet points that they just hammered that point again and again to create, well, not create, but to, have a clear cut message vis-a-vis China on how we see them and how we will, what we ask of them. And of course, it is also, acceptable that if China would like something in return, they could be given something in return in the form of, you know, more normalization of relations. But there are certain sort of red lines we have to establish with the Chinese, with the Beijing regime going forward, that the Beijing cannot cross, or else it would have to be, we will have to do a sort of a, we're gonna have to think outside the box, and we're gonna have to work towards maybe even isolating China from the rest of the world. And of course, we are in the midst of decoupling from China. It's a slow process, but it is happening. And that might be part of the reason why China is reacting the way it is. Anyhow, moving on into our next story, which is, of course, Myanmar. Now, the regime in Myanmar has deployed army across the country to curb the protests, which initially seemed to have worked, but very quickly escalated. Police and military opened fire on protesters, and in the earlier part of the week, one protester was critically injured, and later on, it came out that the protester had died. And of course, a couple of days later, two more protesters were killed in the Mandalay city, making the protest go from just something something where people were just getting injured, getting arrested, but now people are dying. And once blood starts flowing, things become, both sides become more, let's just say, hardened on their stance. Of course, that's not all. It has come out that as many as 495, in fact, even more, were detained during all up until now. Now, it is to be also mentioned that only 460 are still being held as of yet. Of course, Miss Suki's detention was extended, and of course, the thing is that she has not been seen by the public, and everyone assumes that she is under house arrest. Now, the fact that her detention has extended makes me think that the army is not in any mood for any negotiation. I think the army is going in with the sort of the mindset of it's either do or die. Of course, the army also announced that they will release 20,000 prisoners in the coming days. And of course, all of this, how could the international community not have reacted? So there were a few uh, incidents that happened in the international world that did catch my eye. So one of which was there were as many as 5,000 people who protested in front of the Myanmar embassy in Tokyo. But in Singapore, three men are under investigation for their participation in protesting in front of the Myanmar embassy there. And of course, UK and Canada has imposed sanctions on Myanmar. Now, it seems that as I had said last week, that in the coming week or so, we will finally get a clearer picture of what's going on. And I believe, as of yet, from the information that I have provided, that I do think that Myanmar uh, is going to be under military control for the year, and that it is basically gone. The military's just taken over the country, and that democracy is gonna have to wait. Something you know, I wish that hadn't happened. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is India. Now, an update on the avalanche, the landslide that happened in the Himalayan mountains. It seems that the death toll has risen to 50 people, while as of yet, 154 people are missing. Of course, in a separate story within the country is that Miss Disha Ravi, who is a climate campaigner, was arrested. Now, police are also looking for two associates of Miss Ravi in connection to her protests that she helped. She was sort of the person that tried to sort of link the farmer protest with the bigger climate issue. And of course, the Delhi court has ordered Miss Ravi to be held in custody for 5 days. Now, I think this decision by the Delhi court is going to, in my opinion, further exacerbate the situation. But it seems that the situation in India is still not over. I'm pretty sure there's going to be more news coming, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, moving on into our next story is Afghanistan. Now, I think it is important to understand the basic situation in Afghanistan. Now, as of yet, it has been reported or that the Taliban has controls 52% of Afghanistan's territory, while Afghanistan's government controls 59% of the population. Now, bearing in mind that the population that Afghanistan's government is mainly a government that controls the major cities, while the rest of the country is in control of the government, but with the help of the NATO troops and various other countries that are there helping the Afghan government. And so, bearing this in mind, Taliban has warned the US of a major offensive if the US stays in Afghanistan, while the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has indicated that NATO won't leave until time is right, but has one thing has to be mentioned, no decision has been made yet. Of course, the German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas has indicated that German troops are likely to stay after the May 1st deadline. Now, this is something that I am completely against. I think that 1st of May is a deadline. All the troops should get out. I think it is time that we stop thinking of dealing with the situation in Afghanistan through military. I think time is right that we should start transitioning. We should work with the Afghan government, and we should use political means, and we should use our diplomats to deal with the situation in Afghanistan. I think it is time that we tell both all the people of Afghanistan that they are now the masters of their own destiny, and that in the international community that they are now going to participate in the international community as they see fit, and that they have to, moving forward, have to work through negotiations and treaties, and that no more of any of this terrorism warfare will not be accepted. Anyhow, moving on into a little bit more, let's say, tumultuous relations between the US and Iran, as Iran has announced that they will reduce cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Now, meaning that they will uh, stop implementing the quote voluntary transparency measures end quote, and that they will stop adhering to the additional protocols that they were supposed to as per the Iran deal. However, the Iranians have said that they will continue with the nuclear non-proliferation treaty and they will adhere to that. Of course, the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has said that the revival of Iran deal is in Biden administration's hands. And after much wrangling and haggling, it seems that the US has finally come to accept the EU invitation to discuss the Iran deal, as the State Department spokesman Ned Price has said. Now, when it comes to the situation between the US and Iran, and of course broadly the Middle East, I think, and I have always been, I I think there is enough there from both sides that they could work a relation which could be both good for not just the two countries but the region broadly. Now, of course, it will take time for the two countries to again get back on the trust sort of track, let's just say. But I think the Biden administration is, I think it is doing a good thing by trying to negotiate with Iran, because ultimately the objective of the army is to give diplomacy the chance. The army, the military, is supposed to give you an edge so you can have a, a robust diplomacy, and you can have a, let's just say, a bigger hand, you can have more maneuvers within diplomacy. And of course, not just diplomacy, I think that the diplomacy could then spill into other domains, especially into the finance and the economy. I think it is time to just bury the hatchet. I mean, 40 years is just enough is enough, I would say. Anyhow, all the luck I wish both to the United States and Iran, and hopefully through this there will that both the countries can build towards a better and more peaceful Middle East. Moving on into Iraq, it seems that a rocket attack in a military airbase has killed one and injured nine. Now, the nine amongst the nine, eight were civilian contractors, and one was a U.S. service member. Now, the attack happened uh, at a airbase near the Erbil airport. Now, it has been reported that there were three 107 millimeter rockets that landed inside the base, and the Chinese consulate there has also been impacted. And it is unknown to what degree and what specifics the impact the Chinese consulate has faced. And in a separate story, but with respect to Iraq, NATO has announced that they will increase the personnel from 500 to 4,000. Now, it seems that NATO is basically going around trying to increase the number of personnel everywhere. But anyhow, I digress. However, another story that did catch my attention, which I would like to bring the attention to both you people and broadly the world, is the story of the Shia Turkmen women who were the victims of the Daesh attack along with the Yazidis in 2014. It seems that these women continue to suffer in Iraq due to the honor culture, which has which is basically victimizing these women again, where the relatives of these women regard them to be better dead than alive. Now, my heart goes out to all these victims. However, it is, I think, imperative for people who in the West to understand that there is this thing called an honor culture, and that the honor culture is one of the things that is, how should I put it? It is one of the things that's eating the Middle East from inside. And as long as if we are to uh, solve the problem that is in the Middle East, is that we need to understand their culture, and we have to have the courage to face this particular negative side, let's just say, of the honor culture, and it has to be talked in public. It has to be rejected. Let's just say the honor culture of this sort, of this kind of particular kind of honor culture that is the part and parcel of this region, has to, I believe, be criticized, it has to be opposed, and we have to push for the change in the people's thinking broadly, just not just in this, but we have to show them that this thing, this honor culture, is the reason why the Daesh and Al Qaeda are successful. Because of honor culture, a lot of atrocities are just put under the rug. And I would urge that people in the Middle East stop putting atrocities under the rug. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is Syria. Now, 6 non-Syrian militia fighters were reported to have been killed in an Israeli missile strike around Damascus. This was in the earlier part of the week. Now, it began about after midnight and lasted for 30 minutes. Of course, the Syrian air defenses intercepted some missiles, as they report. However, on a separate story, the Syrian Kurds have been reported to have handed over 100 Daesh fighters to Iraq. Now, it seems that the Syrian Kurds have themselves denied it, but it seems these exchanges do continue from time to time. However, in a separate story, it seems that 20 men and women have been killed in just last month in Al Hol camp in northeastern Syria. Now, obviously, one must keep in mind that this Al Hol is very close to the border with Iraq, and it is it's suspected that the Daesh are involved in this. However, nothing much can be said as of yet. And Russia has launched 130 airstrikes, killing 21 Daesh fighters, and all this in 24-hour period in Syria. Now, like in Afghanistan, I think in Syria, I think it's time that we use the tools of politics and diplomacy to deal with this. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is Lebanon. Lebanon's central bank has raised the capital defense at 20%, which was set which is set to be met by the end of month. Now, this requirement was actually set in August of last year in order to strengthen the banking sector. Now, let's put things in perspective. The 20% requirement is equivalent to about 4 billion. But the banking sectors, let's just say the whole in their balance sheet, is around 69 to 80 billion US dollars, which means that even if the capital defenses were at 100%, the banking sector is basically finished. And of course, once things go bad, they go from bad to worse. And if things cannot continue, they will not continue. And as a result, we can see what is happening in Lebanon. I'm assuming another set of financial crisis followed by a much bigger crisis that I don't even want to imagine. Good luck to Lebanon and the Lebanese government. Moving on into our next story is the trouble in paradise. A secret recording of Princess Latifa bint Muhammad Al Maktoum has emerged. Now, Muhammad Al Maktoum is the Prime Minister of the UAE. Now, in the recording, Princess Latifa has described herself as a hostage and is also said that she is feeling unsafe. However, the Dubai Royal Court has claimed that she is safe and well and taken care of. Now, a little bit of the backstory on this. She was detained by commandos off the coast of India in 2018 while she was fleeing. And as a result, the UK Foreign Minister Dominic Raab has demanded that UAE show proof that she is alive, while the UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that UN Commission on Human Rights is looking into the matter. Of course, these kind of stories have a well, basically they've damaged the UAE's reputation as a well, basically it's damaged their reputation on so many levels. And of course, when the UN Commission on Human Rights is watching you, I mean, how good of a country are you? Anyhow, moving on into our next story is the Turkish military operation that was conducted in northern Iraq against the Kurdistan's Workers' Party. Now, in the operation, 48 PKK members were killed while 3 Turkish soldiers were killed. Now, as a result of the operation, 13 executed bodies of Turks were found in a cave. Now, these individuals were held there for 4 years, and it has only now that they were able to get these bodies. Now, inside Turkey, there were broad operations where 718 people were detained, and each because of a suspicions of having links to the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party. While President Recep Erdogan alleges that US has given weapons to PKK. Of course, this making the relations between Turkey and US a little bit more icy. However, the Iraqi MP Abbas Sarut has called the Turkey's action as unacceptable. Now, based on the facts and the information that I could gather, I think the Turkey, in this case, has done the right thing. But of course, there could be additional facts that may emerge that could change my opinion. Anyhow, moving on into Congo. Now, Congo's president Felix Tshisekedi, I believe, on Monday appointed Sama Lukonde Kyenge as the new Prime Minister of Congo. Now, Lukonde is the head of the state mining company, as well as a close ally of President Felix. Now, Sylvester Ilunkamba, who had resigned on January 28 after a vote of no confidence. Now, the appointment actually marks a victory for President Felix over Joseph Kabila. Now, this appointment will allow President Felix to appoint a more friendly cabinet for his agenda. I just hope whatever it is, it is good for the people of Congo. Now, there is definitely much more in this situation that I'm unaware of. It it would require me to go much deeper into, but I will definitely be. I think from this point on, I will have an eye out on Congo and see how this appointment, uh, um, what happens as a result of this. Let's just say. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is in Nigeria. Now, gunmen have kidnapped over 40 people from a government science college. Now, 26 are believed to be students, while the remaining are teachers and staff from the college. And it has also been reported that one student has been killed. Now, President Muhammad Buhari has ordered a rescue operation. Now, to put things in, to give a little context, it seems that in Nigeria, the kidnapping of students is seems to be compared to how should I say, in a sort of like a regular event where gunmen kidnap students and then ransom them for money. It is, in my opinion, the failure of the Nigerian government to have reached such a point where students aren't even safe. And to a certain extent, I think a blame could be also placed on the society at large. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is Burkina Faso. Now, there, Daesh and Al Qaeda have, with their actions, have fueled sexual assaults against women. And it seems that just about any other random guy can just cover his face, put on some kind of get a flag of Daesh or Al Qaeda, claim anything, and just just in the name of these terrorists continue to terrorize the innocent people. And of course, cases of sexual violence are surging. And just like in Iraq, Burkina Faso is also another country that is an honor culture. And that honor culture is, I think, is probably hiding much more. I think there are many more victims of sexual violence in not just Burkina Faso, but other countries as well that do not come out. That if they were to come out, we would it would create a much bigger international story. Now, of course, one must keep in mind that 1 person in 10 in Burkina Faso is food insecure, with rampant poverty and a basically a because of the pandemic, all the countries have taken a hit, and poorer countries have taken a disproportionately bigger hit, making both ruling the countries difficult as well as, how should I say, expose their already weak regimes. Anyhow, moving into our next story around the Horn of Africa. Now, 800 have been were killed at the Church of Saint Mary of Zion in Aksum in Ethiopia in late November. Now, this came out recently because the deacon of the church has come out and he reported that he counted 800 bodies that were killed in just one weekend. Now, I knew that at the end of the Ethiopian war we would get to find atrocities committed, but it is coming out, and we are seeing some of the reports, and the deacon has said that he believes uh, that in the rural areas, he believes that the atrocities, according to him, is much worse. So until or unless some we can get more information, I would have to agree that I believe that there are the Abiy Ahmed's military has either willingly or unwillingly committed atrocities. Of course, the Ethiopian government has rejected access to foreigners in order to investigate, calling it foreign interference. Now, looking at all of this, I think the rejection by the Ethiopian government indicates that they are trying to clean their hands of anything that comes out of this. And I do not have, let's just say, a high confidence in Abiy Ahmed's whatever investigations they do. I would like that, I would urge that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed allow the UN at least to uh, do investigation, allow foreigners, foreign countries, and foreign institutions to do a proper investigation to find if war crimes have happened or not. Anyhow, moving into a little bit of the east, security forces in Somalia have fired on the protesters. Now, the protesters came out because Somalia missed the February 8th election deadline. Now, there seems to be a big debate within Somalia whether to have an indirect election or a direct one man, one vote kind of election. And also, they have started using uh, the whole pandemic as an issue to sort of delay elections in Somalia. Now, as in the case of Afghanistan, Somalia is also it is it has gone down that route, and like I said with Iraq, um, we have to push these, not the governments, but we have to get the people within the country to, I think, freedom of speech. If we could just give them freedom of speech and make them understand that freedom of speech is important, that a lot of their issues would at least be would at least come out, and that once those issues come out, that only then they can actually solve the issues. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is Belarus. It's been a long time. Two journalists, namely Katsiarina Bakhvalova, aka Andreeva, and Daria Choltsova, were convicted of violating public order. Now, they were arrested last November while live streaming demonstrations from their apartment. Now, both work for the Polish-funded Belsat TV channel. Of course, the International Federation of Journalists denounced the ruling along with various other international organizations, and the various other countries also denounced the ruling. Now, it is believed and has been reported that more than 400 journalists have been detained as of because of the whole protest in Belarus, and it is believed that at least 10 were convicted of criminal charges. Now, on top of this, tens of thousands of other civilians were also arrested in Belarus. Now, the situation in Belarus, it seems that President Alexander Lukashenko has basically waited it out. He has effectively, you know, one way or the other, he's going to remain the president until the next election. My advice to the people of Belarus is you need to um, you need to figure out where you need to learn the lessons of this, and you need to work out. Let's just say, yeah. Anyhow, moving on to a little bit east in Moscow, Russia. Alexei Navalny has lost his appeal in the Moscow City Court. Now, in the appeal, his sentence was reduced by 6 weeks. And of course, his legal team has said that they will try to challenge the decision that has rejected the appeal. Uh, they will challenge the decision to reject the appeal's decision. Now, in the case of Alexei Navalny and all of the situation in Russia, and I'll come to what I think, but of course, Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda has called for targeted sanctions against Russian leadership. Now, I think that the West has, in my opinion, an opportunity where they can work with Russia. They could use this opportunity to not just work with Russia, but also they can help them both financially, and they can also try to diplomatically negotiate um, what they can and they can achieve, and they could also, through diplomacy, can work out how they would something for Alexei Navalny. And I think that working with Russia would be, I think we need to look at Russia from the perspective of the fact that it borders China, and that if we in the West can work with Russia and develop, let's just say, just better than good relations, I think that we can at least augment the behavior of Beijing regime. However, this is just my hope. I'm sure there's much more complexity in the situation that I'm not aware of. That if I were aware of, that would make me question this kind of thinking. But anyway, that's just my view. Moving on into our next story is from Washington, United States of America. Former President Donald Trump was acquitted by the U.S. Senate. Now, the final tally came 57 for versus 43. And of course, this meant that they were shy of 10 votes to convict Donald Trump of of the instigation of insurrection, I believe. Now, there were issues raised, and namely the constitutionality of impeachment and the freedom of speech. Now, as far as the constitutionality of impeachment is concerned, I think the precedent has been set, and personally, uh, I think that the Democrats, in my opinion, made a good case that yes, they can constitutionally can make impeach former President Donald Trump, because it, it is anyhow, because they can, because in the punishment it isn't just that they can remove, but they can also prevent the person from ever running or acquiring any public office. However, on the issue of freedom of speech, I think the Republicans' side made a better case, making where they made, I think, a sufficiently good enough case from my perspective that what Donald Trump had said was within the freedom of speech, and it did not amount to any kind of incitement to do anything in particular. However, it is, let's just say, one of the complaints I have with Donald Trump is that when he's in the moment, he's really in the moment, that he sometimes detaches himself from the broader context. And I think this is what happened in this situation. I think he got into the moment, he gave the speech, he didn't understand the broader context within which he was operating. And of course, the individuals who stormed the Capitol, it has been pointed out that they didn't really hear what Donald Trump had really said. So again, it's a bit murky. But anyhow, Donald Trump got acquitted, clearing his way, if he ever wishes to run again, that he can run again. Now, moving on into our next story is the situation in Australia. Now, Australian House of Representatives have passed a legislation that would make Facebook and Google pay for Australian journalism. Now, it is important to keep in mind that the legislation has only passed the House of Representatives and it has not passed the Senate, and therefore this legislation it has not become the law yet. However, Facebook panicked and they started blocking users from Australia to share news. Now, Facebook, for whatever reason, is basically showing what Facebook will have to do in order to save money. While as of yet, the negotiations between Australia and Facebook are ongoing. Now, this situation between uh, the the social media and the governments in which they operate, there seems to be a bit of a problem between how the social media is currently operating. But I believe the solutions that the government is coming up with is far worse than the problems we are currently facing with Facebook or Google in general. And I think even in this case, I think a little bit outside of the box thinking has to occur. We need to find out exactly why and how these companies, we need to figure out why they do whatever we might call negative things they're doing. And then from there, we need to, only once we understand, only then we can figure out how to solve these particular, um, let's just say, problems. Anyhow, moving on into our final slide. These are other newses that I wanted to cover, but they couldn't really fit anywhere. Anyhow, the Nigerian economist, whose name I will not even try to pronounce, was finally appointed as the Director General of World Trade Organization. So congratulations to her. And of course, in a separate story, Turkey has announced a $1 billion space program. Amongst it is that they will build a launch site in Somalia. So congratulations to both Turkey and Somalia, and hopefully this can help some of the troubles in Somalia. However, of course, the within Turkey there are questions as to how they will finance this, but hey, you know, we'll find out soon enough whether this is an actual space program or just an announcement to deflect attention. Of course, the UAE's Hope space probe transmitted the first images of Mars 5 days after entering the orbit. Now, UAE has also come out and said that they plan to uh, actually inhabit these Mars by 2117. So good luck, UAE, because I sure as hell won't be able to confirm that if it happened or not. Anyhow, uh, that's it for this video. If you uh, liked what you saw in here, hit that like button. Um, write in the comment sections your thoughts, criticisms, and anything you think I might have missed. Of course, sources to the news stories are in the description box below, and I will see you in the next video.